Well, I think a lot of our facilities, and one that specifically comes to mind is our police facility, is in dire need of an upgrade. Unfortunately, it was not included. That was prior to my coming on. It was not included in the 2011 bond package. We have to make our public safety a priority. The men and women who protect the city of Shreveport should not have to suffer under dire circumstances. When public governments build buildings, a lot of times they build it without taking into consideration deferred maintenance. And so if you look at a lot of those departmental budgets, you will see that they have a deferred maintenance cost that goes often unfunded. We have to start, some of the debt that we have rolling off the books, we have to start looking at ways of, one, how can we save up enough reserves to start going back, putting some of that money into addressing some of those capital needs. We cannot have buildings, our public facilities crumbling. The other thing that as a city we have to do is we need to start rolling some of that inventory out of our books. If that means selling some of those assets, if that means leasing some of those assets to neighborhood organizations who need a facility, if that's partnering with economic development organizations who are looking to put tenants in them. But sometimes at a certain point, we have to look at our inventory and we have to know what we're able to maintain, what do we need to give away, and if the assessment comes back that we need to demolition it and make it a nice green space, I'm not opposed to that as well. But we can't continue to just grow our inventory of capital needs when it exceeds the expense, when it exceeds the revenue that we're getting in, and we don't have enough revenue to cover the expense of maintenance or building new buildings. But I think building a new police headquarters has to be a priority, or at least renovating and updating it when we start talking about going out for another bond series.
Yes. So I think that's just like a pretty simple budgetary fix. I think we should only have what we can maintain. When we get stretched too thin and we're not able to maintain buildings, it does look pretty bad for that neighborhood and for the city overall. So I think we need to cut back on the buildings that the city owns if we can't maintain them. And we could sell the buildings and turn liabilities into assets at that point. And that also kind of bleeds into the conversation of the adjudicated properties that the city has to manage. And with that conversation, we have to make the process easier on passing over titles for adjudicated properties. And I've proposed having a legislative caucus here, because that's statute, how we pass over titles. But having a legislative caucus to where they go to Baton Rouge and pass laws to make it easier for us to do that in order to, again, spur economic development, kind of get after the blight in our neighborhoods and make Shreveport a nicer place in every neighborhood and not just, certain ones. So
I'm a civil engineer. I've studied transportation issues, also structural issues. My strong strength is in structural engineering and architectural type work. What I would do, I would have these buildings evaluated to see what would be the best use for these particular buildings. We can organize I guess a committee to sort of like look at and see what we could perhaps use in terms of trying to best utilize these particular buildings that are empty. So
our consent decree is certainly, we're in phase 2 right now, the fifth. We have 5 stages, you know. I'm very aware of that and what we're doing and how we're doing it and how we're funding it. But as far as your question, right now we have 45 buildings that are vacant downtown. We have Fairgrounds Field, which we put $300,000 into several years ago, and we just walked away. We have, now the Bats have control of it. What my plan is not to bring in any arenas or any cross-bayou projects. It's going to be to focus on putting our money back into maintaining and make sure that I think by putting things first, and when I say putting things first, what I really want to do is clean up our city right now. It's got to be first. Before we can attract investors, nobody wants to move here. Why? Because our crime, we're 18th in the country as far as homicides. Today, we're not a safe city. We've got to make sure that we address that. We've got to make sure that we do our infrastructure and address that and get our litter picked up. And it's going to be much easier for the chamber and us to say, hey, we're going to have our economic development person to go out there, and now I can sell you something. I can't sell you something that is broken. And right now, Shreveport is broken, and nobody wants to come here, and that's why Bozier's, I met with Low Walker earlier, and, the thing that they do, they make it easy. We need to make it easy. And but as far as how I'm going to address it, is I really feel that we have got to take, and it's going to have to be planned. I mean, we can't just say we're going to throw a bunch of money and not get anything fixed properly. We have to look at every single thing, and we have to prioritize our projects and make sure that we put the funding into those projects to make sure that we get the most out of it and get it fixed. And when I say prioritize, make sure that it's best for the city, it's best for us, and it's best as a whole.
The infrastructure seems to be one of the hot buttons right up there with crime. The infrastructure is going to get taken care of. I mean, we're mandated to take care of that. It's disturbing that we didn't do the preventative maintenance which brought us to this point now, and that we have to play catch up. And now we pretty much have been told or ordered, that you must perform these specific duties. I believe the question is going to be, in addition to, what do you see the infrastructural prospects, I guess, downtown? I think the downtown development, Liz Swain has done a phenomenal job, this is my opinion, in that I love to see the old buildings rejuvenated. I love to see outside investors and local investors come in and actually breathe new life into these buildings. Millennials is a big concern of millennials is a big concern of mine, because that is who we are growing the city for. I believe that at 65, I've pretty much done everything I'm going to do, and now I have to leave a legacy for those people coming up in behind us. I have a 16-year-old, so I want to know, my charge is what's the Shreveport that she's going to inherit. So focusing on how to best develop our downtown facilities, and the disrepair that's going on now is a prime concern. I think, again, surrounding myself with people smarter than I that have a lot more knowledge in this specific area. I am a firm believer that we are the capital of the architects. We're the hub of the wheel. We have everything, almost everything, that we need to be successful right here, right now, from transportation, packaging, manufacturing, the arts, technology, medical. We really have it all, except for the leadership to bring it all together. So I think that's paramount. I think back to growing the economy, which I think is paramount in refurbishing some of these buildings. We start with cleaning out our own closet first.
Well, let me tell you, we have a lot of needs. Coming into the office, we needed about $1.5 billion just to catch up on infrastructure alone. And over the past 3.5 years, or 3 years and about 8 months, we've been able to spend on streets alone $58.6 million. So we have done more than 216 streets in the city. We have about 1,000 miles of streets that really need repair and have been neglected for 25, 30 years. We have a lot of buildings in Shreveport that belong to the city, and some do not, that really need attention. So what we've done in the past 3 years and 8 months from our strategic plan, with the funding that our citizens voted in a bond package in 2011, the money was there, we needed to execute. And so we have actually addressed, and we've done 26 different building and facility projects at a cost of $35 million in the past 3 years and about 8 months. And so we are getting there. It's not going to happen overnight, but we are making those gains. We have that strategic plan that we developed. We have measurable goals every year. We're looking at other ways with our buildings, particularly buildings downtown that are empty. So we're bringing in developers. In fact, we're in the middle of negotiations with 2 other developers, even as we sit here, to be able to come in and overhaul some of the older buildings that have been vacant. And we now have lofts downtown. We have another building that's going up in the near future where other lofts and mixed-use property will be, where we have retail on the bottom and lofts on the top. We have another developer that's working on one of our older buildings, and what we do is we try to make sure that we get them all the incentives that they deserve. So we're doing a lot of that. We have some capital money that we can use, and we've used those as well as we possibly can. But we are constantly marketing Shreveport, bringing in developers to help us. We have applied for the Opportunity Zones program. We submitted 7 of those. We got 5 of those approved, and so we're now trying to find, and we have actually a brochure that we've developed where we are going to be marketing, just touching bases with different groups and different investors so that we can attack that problem more than what we've done, but we have made significant gains.